Today's table of content, we have speaker's introduction, Kuwait regulatory landscape, Kuwait's FATF grey listing, AML CFT requirements deep dive, case studies, and how Pinnacle Consulting can assist you better. Starting with our speaker's introduction, my name is Melinda Miranda, and I'm CAMS qualified with over 12 years of experience in banking and in exchange houses. I have also worked in JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank, and HSBC. Today, I have the pleasure of being your moderator as we navigate the critical regulatory shifts impacting the Kuwaiti market in 2026. We are joined by our extreme panel to guide us through these changes. We have with us Dr. Amarjeet Singh, who is the Director of GRC at AJMS Global. He is a PhD holder and CAMP certified expert with over 15 years of experience across banking and DNFBPs. He previously served as CB approved compliance officer and the author of The Money Trail Mastering Financial Crime Compliance and publisher of research on TBML. We are also accompanied by Mr. Udit Wadhwa, who is the CEO and partner at Kuwait Pinnacle Consulting Company. Mr. Wadhwa is a CAMS CIA, PMP, and CISA certified professional who has led compliance and audit functions for leading financial institutions right here in Kuwait. Before we commence the session, I would like to inform you that all questions can be addressed in the chat box and will be taken up at the end of the session. To start us off, I'll hand it over to Dr. Amarjeet to take the session forward.
Thank you so much, Melinda. Good morning, everyone. Myself, Amarjeet. I'm here to give you the brief about in today's landscape, whatever we have discussing on the compliance architecture for exchange houses. I once again welcome everyone on board, and let's begin with our today's most important topic, what we are discussing here now. So from here now, we will move into the heart of today's session, which is there. So as I want to start with something very, very important before we look into any specific regulations. So as we all know that exchange house in Kuwait do not operate in a gray zone. So there is a very, very clear, very detailed legal architecture that governs everything what you do in your day-to-day life. So whether it is your, verifying your customer identities, whether how quickly you must report your suspicious transaction, what happens when your problem arrives, and everything. So there's very detailed architecture is there. So in today's, topic, in today's webinar, we are gonna walk through about the most important regulatory frameworks, okay, which are there, and how we can, understand well to ensure that all the laws, regulations are properly implemented in our compliance culture. So moving on to our first slide, Melinda, can you please move to next slide, please? Thank you so much. Now, this is a very, very important slide, which gives a brief about what are the pillars of that. So think this as a pillars, think it of as a pyramid, I would say. Okay, so at top of the legislation, you can see, which is our primary legislation. Okay, so below it, you can see as executive legislation. So that gives the law as kind of teeth. And there is operational level also, which is the CBUK circulars, which are the most important currently, and most specific derivatives, which you can say, and which will be measured against you during the inspection when they come for inspections and all. So now let us look each one of them properly, how this is impacting and how the policies and procedures are made. So if we talk about the pillar number 1, which is a law number 106 of 2013, which is a foundation law. Okay, so our law 2006 is 106 of 2013 is a Kuwaiti's primary AML CFT law legislation, what we can say. So everything else we discussed today, it sits on top of this law. This is very, very important to understand. Now, what happens in this law? It mandates the 4 core obligations of all the financial institutions in Kuwait, and exchange houses definitely, which are explicitly included in that. Now, what are those 4 which we need to understand? The first of all is customer due diligence one. That is the most important part here. So you must know who your customers is, which is very, very important. The second law says that you need to have a suspicious transaction reporting. Means you must file STRs when something doesn't add up or something which you feel is suspicious. Third thing, which this law says that is about sanction screening. Means you must check your customers, your beneficiaries, your counterparties, your UBOs and everything against the sanction list. Okay. The fourth thing what this law says that a documented, a kind of functioning compliance function. So it's not a kind of the policy on paper, but an active program. In that program, there should be a compliance officer, there should be systems, there should be a procedures, controls, the board level reporting. So all those things should be there very much in your, a compliance program. So the goal, what is the goal of this law? The goal is very, very simple. So that means there are not aspirational goal or something. The goal is there should be a legal requirements. Okay. So anyone who is not able to meet these requirements will definitely face the regulatory violations. So this is what, in short, this regulation, the foundation talks about. Now, if we go on second one, which is your ministerial resolution number 37 of 2013, which is kind of operational details, we would say. No, this resolution is a kind of implementing laws for regulation for law 106. Now, it tells you how to operationalize the law, which is very, very important thing. Now, these three things highlights here. Now, we can highlight it, the three things which you can see on the screen. The first thing is that the thresholds. Okay, there are some threshold which has kept with more than 3,000 CD threshold is there. So any transaction at or above this level triggers mandatory CDD level. So any transaction which trigger this threshold, we need to perform a CDD on that. So below this threshold, you still need to apply a risk-based approach, but this is a hard line here. Second, which is Article 6, which says that 2 days of business days STR deadline, which is there in any STR which you find out, need to ensure that you timely report to them, which plays a very, very important role here. It's not like you don't have a proper guideline. The guideline clearly says that it's not about weeks, it's about days. It's clearly about 2 business days you have to report it. The third thing is about the beneficial ownership and enhanced due diligence framework, which is very, very important for high-risk customers. Now here, when you go deep, in our next slide, we can go deep also, how we can identify the UBOs and everything, which plays a very, very important role, because this is where most of the companies get stuck in identifying the ultimate UBOs of that. No, the requirement says that whenever you identify the corporate culture structure or something, complex structure or something, you need to always ensure that you must go deeper into that, identify who is the ultimate owner of those companies and everything. So that plays a very, very important role, identifying the ultimate person who is holding the company, or who is the person who is controlling the company, who has the power to vote for anything. So that is a very, very important part which you need to understand. Now, the third pillar, which also plays a very, very important part, which is your circulars. Okay, you might have seen after the incident what has happened. There is a lot of, most of the compliance team are facing, I think, right now, every week or every 2 weeks, you're getting a lot of circulars from the central bank. Now, this is what the CBK inspectors will focus on mostly when they come for the inspections. In the past 12 months or 6 months, you might have seen a series of circulars which has been issued, that gives you fundamentally change the operational requirement for exchange houses. we will cover most of them in today's presentation. So let me flag the major one which are there. We suppose a requirement for enterprise-wide risk assessment requirement. This is one of the requirement is consumer protection framework obligation, which has also come, or revised cash limit, which was effective, I think, Feb 2026. There is also a new circular which has come in, mandatory PCI mobile ID integration for customer verification and everything, which we discuss in today's slides. Or there is something also which has come up on STR reporting requirement through GoML, or semi-annual audit requirements, not annually or semi-annual. Also, there's important notice which has come, which is very, very important for all the compliance officer, which is how you can produce a detailed report. You have to enhance the compliance officer reporting structure, which is going to effect from April 1st, which has got effected. Which kind of reports you can submit, what kind of content should be there in the report. So that all the circulars which has come is very, very important. I think these all the circulars need to always ensure that whenever the new circulars you receive, do a proper gap analysis and try to implement it immediately. So these, as I mentioned, so each of these is not an optional, because each of these carries an inspection risk. So we are going to walk in through today's the most critical one in detail, and I will explain you each of these circulars in detail. Melinda, can you please move to the next slide? Now, before we go to the, in the circulars, understand each circulars and everything. Now, let me go, little bit give you brief about it. I'm sure you guys know very well what happened and everything. So I will go into the direct video about what happened, what does it mean, and what you need to do. Okay, so we all know that Kuwait was very listed by the FATF in 13th of February 2026. So there's a significant development. So let us understand it fully, like we have in this slide where we can talk about everything, what happened in that. So this FATF listing, why it happened, and what the action plans that requires. Okay, so this is a little bit 5-minute slide which I've kept it here just to give you brief about it. Now, what has happened? We all know that Kuwait was grey listed by the FATF in February 2026. Okay, after plenary meeting, and not only Kuwait, there was another country, Papua New Guinea, which also been grey listed. Now, here we need to understand the context, which is very, very important. Kuwait had also previously also been released in 2012, if you might remember, and then got exited in 2015 also. And there is therefore a return to the list, which plays a very, very important part here. Now we need to understand here what has happened. Okay, is grey listed? Fine, that was a decision. But here are specific deficiencies which we need to understand. Why? Because that is going to impact directly or indirectly in your processes, in your inspections, because it's linked to the each institutions and everything. Now, here I wanted to pay a little bit attention because these are very, very important where when central bank come for the inspection, they are going to scrutinize these kind of things very, very deeply. Now, what was those? But first, the only basic understanding of money laundering risk at the national level, meaning the risk assessment were superficial. So we need to have a proper detailed understanding of the money laundering, terrorist financing, proliferation financing, that plays a very, very important role. The second was which one? The low understanding of terrorist financing risk, which plays a very, very important risk here. Third one was that significant deficiencies in STR reporting, especially from the non-banking sector. Okay, so that plays a very, very important part which we need to focus on with inspector are going to focus on in the next inspections. Weak beneficial ownership transparency in company register. So UBOs data sometimes incomplete or not able to identify who ultimate UBOs. As I discussed in the previous, the law says that we need to have a complete understanding of the UBO structure. So that plays a very, very important part here. Inadequate implementation, if you can see, of targeted financial sanctions, which is a very, very serious concern because TFS obligations were not being executed properly. That places a company or the country into the risk here. Other thing, what we have observed is a limited money laundering investigations across cross-border currency movements, okay, which is also directly reference to your remittance flows and everything. Other thing, what we have seen is insufficient AML and CFT supervisions on DNFPPs, okay, which was one of the point like the DPMS sector or the real estate sector. So they will not properly supervise effectively, not have proper controls. But this is where they are going to focus on now. Now look at these lists carefully. Okay, the three of those, even the 7 items which are there, directly relates to how the exchange house operates. Okay, how you can link into your policies, your culture, your framework, like your STR reporting, your beneficial ownership, how strong you have this framework for this cross-border movements or any related to your core business activities. So as I mentioned that the FATF is saying that the Kuwait's exchange house sector needs an improvement in the AML or safety framework as well. So that plays a very, very important role. Now, we need to understand in the right-hand side what are the action plans. Now, Kuwait has already submitted. We all know that. I think if you were part of the previous presentation which we have presented, that was related to the Kuwait's FATF review. In that, we also invited one of the previous FATF member, Miss Viana. She was also the part of that. And I think she has very much covered in that what happened, what was the impact in each sector. So that was very detailed presentation, what we webinar in the last time. So in that we have presented here. Now in this I will not talk about in detail because we already covered the previous webinar. So here I'm covering the most important points where The Kuwait has submitted a formal action plan that we already know. The item mostly relevant to you for the exchange house relevantly will be you need to have an enhanced outreaches. So what will be there? Enhanced outreach to exchange houses. For you, especially definitely will be there for precious metal and stone dealers and everything, but especially for you also it will be there. So you can expect CBK, to be on your doorstep anytime. Distribute like a sector level money laundering typologies and indicators, which is need to always ensure that you might be getting a new typologies or indicators which you need to ensure should be included, do a proper assessment, including your systems and everything. Ensure beneficial ownership registry data is accurate and it's current, which is very, very important role. So your UBO record will be verified properly. So you need to ensure that if you have a data, beneficial UBO data, it must be always be updated. Apply a meaningful sanctions for inaccurate beneficial ownership information, because that will give you any kind of fines or licensing and everything is there. So that risk is there. Increase money laundering investigation on your cross-border currency movements, which is very, very important part here. You might be getting more scrutiny on that part area also. Continuous improvement you have to make on the TFS and proliferation financing, particularly it's relevant to Iran, North Korea, and Russia-related sanctions and everything. So that plays a very, very important role. So here, the most important part which you need to take away from this slide is that if your exchange house is not filing a quality STR, or if it does not have verified the complete UBO data, or you cannot able to demonstrate a functioning, you have a proper framework, you have proper systems in place where you can do a proper screening or something, this is what you are exactly the type of institution the FATF for a CPK will focus on. So the most important part, you need to ensure, need to have a proper filing, need to have proper verification data, need to have proper KYC procedures, need to have proper TFS sanctions and regimes and systems in place to avoid any kind of consequences from the CPK. Melinda, can you please move on to the next slide? Thank you. Now, in this slide, we will just, let me not translate the grey listing into very practical consequences for your day-to-day operations. So there are 4 key areas, okay, which you need to be prepared for immediately, okay, because as I mentioned in the previous slide, you will be getting increased supervision now. Okay, now what does it mean? That means that CPK does not have choice here now. No, when a country is into the gray list, the regulator must demonstrate to the FATF now that they are actively supervising the sectors. Now, what happened in UAE previously when UAE came into the gray list, we have seen a lot of inspection from the Central Bank of UAE. There was a surprise inspection, there was a thematic reviews, there was a full inspection reviews, there was a scale person reviews. So there, the supervisory controls, the supervisory regime has completely changed. Why? Because the pressure comes on the CBK, central bank. They have to prove to the regulator, to the FATF that yes, we understand our risk and we have taken a proper consequences. So we have taken a proper mitigation controls. We are supervising the controls. We are doing this, and that. Now, what does it mean for you is that you can expect a more frequent on-site inspections. Okay, so the cycle will compress. It's not like maybe in previous, I'm not sure in what was the previously, might be getting inspections maybe 1, 2 years or 3 years. No, this time you might be seeing a regular inspections maybe once in a year or maybe more than one in a year. So the CBK will review your compliance officer's report in detail. It's not just they just need to file. So whatever report, whatever document you will file to the CBK will be reviewed in detail. So you have to make sure that whatever documents, everything you are presenting to them has to be very, very detailed, very, very, very well reviewed. Inspector may ask specific questions about your quality or frequency of STR filing. They may ask a question about your systems, how your systems are working, what controls you have in place, how frequently you are testing your systems, what mechanism you have in place. So those kind of questions you might be facing from them. Second, definitely is about your correspondent banking pressure, so which is there. Okay, so this is what we have practically seen that. So this is my experience when I was working in the UAE entities here. So after grey listing 2022 in UAE, the UAE financial institutions saw around a 40% increase in correspondent banking documentation requirements. So I think that Kuwait also might face the same kind of scrutiny starting now. So what kind of scrutiny will be there? Maybe the strict enhanced due diligence on the cross-border transfers, more paperwork, okay, slower processing time because they need to spend more time on the EDDs. Some international bank may also increase the compliance fee or put any restrictions on that. Maybe they ask for more detailed documentation, which was not there before. So those kind of issues, might be there. Third area which you can see is enhanced due diligence by the international partners and everything. As I told you, right, it's not only goes beyond direct to the correspondent banking. Even any global institutions dealing with Kuwait, which is linked transactions, but they will be applying now EDD measures. Okay, so whether it is cross trade finance, cross border payments, or any foreign partners or any kind of due diligence standards will be there. They have to do the proper due diligence on that. Last but not least, which is your, I want to be very, very clear, which is, it's not a situation where you wait for further guidance or something. As a gray listing is, the gray listing effect is no here. So regulators clock is running now. We need to treat the gray listing as a compliance emergency. So not a future kind of projects here. So you have to strengthen your STRs, as I told you before. Make sure whatever STR you're filing should be a quality STRs. Okay, volume, accuracy, timelines are very, very important. Verify, update your records, your KYC records, your UBA records, ensure your systems are all working properly fine. So any institutions that moves quickly will manage this, okay? So the ones that, they're going to wait for the CPK inspections and then make the changes, it will be very, very late. So you need to ensure that you have to pull up your socks today and work on those areas which are gray areas and make sure you fix those areas immediately before the inspector will come and notice the differences. So that is a very, very important slide I thought of, explaining to you. Melinda, can you please move to the next slide? Now, in this, now we understood a little bit about the consequences. Now we will move a little bit about the AML safety requirements into deep dive, which was our main agenda for the today's present webinar and all. So we are going to the operational side where in the next 4 slides, we will give you the brief about the CBK circulars, what has changed and how you run your exchange jobs day to day. So, as I mentioned to you, these are very, very detailed one. You need to ensure that, what is there for you. And whenever the new circular will come, you have to perform your gap analysis and everything and ensure that whatever gap you perform, you need to have a proper mitigation plan for those, which you need to present it to the board. And this is what the CBK inspector, when they come for inspections, this is what they check, what you did when you received the circular. Have you done a gap assessment or not? And what that gap assessment you have done, what changes you have done in your policies, in your systems, in your framework. Does your management, does your board is aware of those circulars or not? So this is very, very important part here. Now, in this, we can talk about the first circular, which is about the revised cash limit, okay, which is around more than 1,000 maximum daily cash limit. And no, what does it mean? No, this circular, which has come into effect on 2nd of February 2026, no exchange houses may accept a cash above more than 1,000 or any kind of foreign currency per day with per customer. Now here, the 3 things which you need to understand here, which applies here. Okay, the first thing is that it is cumulative across the entire day. So that means no per individual transaction. Okay, it's not kind of not per individual transaction. It is like cumulative across the entire day. So that means a customer who does the 3 transactions, take an example of 444 on the same day, that means that limit has been exceeded. So as soon as he does the more than 2 transactions, the limit will get exceeded. So that means, and second thing, it applies across all the branches. So suppose if a customer who transact at one branch in the morning and does another transaction, another branch in the morning. So that combined total is what matters here. And for this, what you need to have a real-time system, tracking system that oversees across all the networks and everything. Means customer doing branches from any branches and all. The third important thing is that whenever there is a cash limit exceeds, the access must be settled by debiting the customer's bank account, which is very, very important here, or through another CPK permitted banking method what you have. So the customer cannot simply come back tomorrow and ask for these details and everything. So these are most important things which you need to always remember here. Now, to have this, what is important for you here? The important for you here is a system controls. This is what you need to build here. The only way to comply with this circular is through technology. Why? Because You cannot sit back and run a formula in the Excel and see, okay, which customer has exceeded the limit, which customers has done so many transactions, which customer has gone to how many branches. We cannot do that, right? So manual tracking does not work here at this scale. So this is what, and that friend, the central bank does not, expecting anyone who is doing any kind of manual intervention at all. So what you need to have a real-time daily accumulation tracker, okay, the control in the system that aggregates the cash receipt per customer ID across all the branches, which plays a very, very important role. Second control, what you can put in place, like a hard system lock, okay, not kind of warning or something where the customer branch can still make the transaction, just show the warning on the top. No. So we can put a hardcore block in the system. That is very, very important whenever it reaches a limit. Third thing, the systems must apply the block at point of time, as I mentioned, not before the money is received. So you don't need to go back and again refund the money or something. That will have a proper control. This is what the CBQ is expecting. The third thing is that the training, what your frontline must know that. So your teller are the first line of compliance on this circular. Why? They need to understand that because multiple small transactions from small customer on the same day are aggregated, right? So this is not just about cash transactions individually. They need to understand they should have a proper system. The system should show on the screen, this customer from this ID has done so many transactions and everything. Agents or third party cannot bypass the limit by splitting the transactions or by, or we can say transacting at multiple branches as we discussed in the previous one. If the customer argues or pressure the teller, okay, the teller escalates, they did not find any workaround, something. They need to ensure that, they need to have a proper systems, proper trainings in place, which plays a very, very important role. Structuring red flags, which is critical point here, as we all know the customer who deliberately structure the cash transaction below this one to avoid the daily limit is kind of committing the offense. It's a criminal offense, right? So structuring, as we all know, it's kind of sorry, it's kind of breaking up the transaction to stay below the reporting or limit thresholds and all. So this itself is a suspicious indicator in case if a customer who is splitting the transaction, he knows that 1,000 is the limit, he will do 400, 400 or 200, 200 or 500, 500. So that your compliance team will need to be very much trained to identify such kind of patterns or such kind of transactions. Other thing is that documentation. So what documentation is there? What CBK expects to see? They want to see at every case where a customer is directed to pay via bank account because of cash limit has been reached must be documented with a proper audit trail. The CBK inspector, when they come for inspection, they pull out this data and check the limit that has been actually been enforced or not. So they come to system, they check, they do the transaction checks and everything to see whether do you have a proper documentation in place or not? Do you have a proper controls in place or not? Do you have a proper systems, the proper trainings in place or not? So this is what the circular is mostly talking about. And I'm sure that you guys might have put proper controls in place based on this circular. If not, I would request you please go back today and do the proper gap assessment on this circular and see do you have a proper controls in place or not. Melinda, next slide, please. Now, this is a very, very important circular, okay? I think this same kind of circular got issued in EVE also. I remember, I think back in 2023, where they want us to include the detailed compliance structure report. I think initially we used to submit maybe I think 2 or 3 page of report to the board, but after the circular, it went up to more than 50-page report. So a lot of work you have to do now. So the CPK, you can see it has now prescribed exact what your compliance officer report must contain and how it must be structured properly. Okay, this is so as I mentioned, the circular's guidance is not a suggestion, it's just a mandatory format. So, and you have to follow everything what is there in the report. You cannot skip anything, in the report. So whatever they have given in the circular, you need to ensure that everything is being implemented, everything is being reported to the board. And we all know that is being effective from 1st of April, which means that you have to be ensure you might have structured the report properly and submit to them. And that's a report you need to submit to the board of directors, your partners, or your senior management, which is a very, very important part here. Now, they have structured into the 5 mandatory sections, okay, the plus 9 other things which are there. So let me walk through the little bit about it, exactly what needs to be done. The first should be executive summary. Executive summary is what? Is a board level snapshot. Okay, what the board need to see first. What the message you want the board to see. That's very, very important part here. So it must give you a leadership, a clear or concise picture of the three things, like what are the findings? Okay, the key findings from for this period, the risk that has been identified, and what immediate actions are required for this. This is your $1 million slide. This is what the board see that. It happens everywhere. When you submit a report to the board, which is 20-page report, do you think the board will read all the 20-page report? No, they don't have time to see all 20-page report. So you have to, in the first slide, give the executive summary. What you expecting board to see, which should be clearly identified from your side. What are the key findings you identified during the period? What, the risk you identified, what are the key findings for that, and what immediate actions is required to fix those findings. Okay, so that plays a very, very, why? Because this is linked to your fines and penalties. If something goes wrong tomorrow, if the inspection happens and something goes wrong, and the board will say, why this was not highlighted to me? And then you cannot say that time, sir, I already highlighted it was on page number 51, paragraph number, and the second paragraph on line number this. No, right? So it has to become in your executive summary. That plays a very, very important part. The second thing is that your AML compliance program assessment. So this is the most substantial session here. So it provides a kind of comprehensive evaluation of your AML CFT programs. What does you understand from the prohibition financing and how you implicitly include it in your scope. So that also you need to identify the operational deficiencies which are there, not just theoretical procedural deficiency or something. So actual gaps as a compliance officer, which you need to identify, has to be documented in your AML compliance assessment. So each area you have to take and do a proper gap assessment with that areas and everything, which plays a very, very important part. The third session, action plan. Action plan plays a very, very important part here. So for every deficiency, what you identify in section 1 or 2, whatever is there, so you must have a corresponding action in that plan. You cannot just say, okay, this is what the finding identified without having an action plan. That is incomplete. So any action plan you submit, any finding you submit, make sure you also submit the action plan along with that. So every action must have three things, a very clear ownership. Okay. Who will take the ownership of this finding? Suppose you identify there is a finding in the screening, or you identify there is a finding in the training. No, you have to clearly mention that who will be responsible for this. We have to correctly name the person, not just department. Okay, training is there, training department will be responsible. No, you have to particularly specify the person's name who should be responsible for this one, not just a department or something. A specific deadline is very, very important. You cannot just put, okay, this finding will be mitigated by end of April or end of June. No, you have to be specifically that this finding will be mitigated or completed by 10th of June. Have to be very, very specific. And the measurable outcomes. So this is a very, very important part. This is what they're expecting in the report. The fourth part, and conclusion and recommendations, which is also very, very important part. So this session specifically calls out three types of weaknesses, maybe your technology and automated system gaps, what gaps you have in your systems, and staffing level deficiency. If you have any kind of deficiencies, you need more staffing or something, you can put that. Domain expertise gaps, if you have something, you can put that. So for each weaknesses, as I mentioned, they should include a specific remedies, not just a general observations. The fifth session is a board approval and submission. So this report must be formally been reviewed and should be approved by the board or the partner. So the approval must be documented properly within the report itself. There should be a minutes of the meeting we have discussed this report, and maybe you can sign a resolution or something. So that will show a governance part, that your governance is strong. That means it's not just your part is just to submit the report, but is to explain to the board what the outcome of this report is that. And the board have explained it, understood it very well. So that plays a very, very important role here. And apart from that, there are other 9 appendices which are there, which is you have to include, must be included in your report, which related to your STR and SCR filing, your high-risk customer profiles, how many you have high-risk customer, medium-risk customers, your UBO details, your training records, your policy updates, your technology updates if you have done anything. So everything has to be detailed properly in your report, which plays a very, very important part here. So make sure you start getting this evidences now only, so we'll have a time systematically you make a format, and present it to the board, or maybe circulate to the board over the email or something. So yeah, so this was all about this notice. Next slide, please. Now, there are other two notices which are there, which are two critical operational changes will be there. One will be the the PACI, which is a Public Authority for Civil Information, mobile ID verifications, and then there is a charitable transfer. Let us discuss one by one. Now, left-hand side, you can see is a PACI mobile ID circular, reference number 621-2026. Now, this is a fundamental change on how you verify your customer's identity. Very, very important part. CBU has mandated that you have to use a PACI mobile ID, which is a public authority for civil information mobile ID application to verify your customers for all the transaction, which is very, very important part here. Now, let me very clear about what all transactions means here. Okay. So this is not limited to kind of high value transaction or a suspicious transaction. This is every transaction. I repeat this again, this sentence once again. This is not limited to your high value or kind of suspicious transaction or something or other that. This is every transaction. Okay, so this integration with PACI is a system used to verify the person standing in front of your teller that who is this person is. Okay, so this is very, very important part here. So there are four operational requirements which is outlined in this circular. The first circular I mentioned about outline is that you have to complete a technical integration between your core remittance system and the PACI's database. Okay, they have given a deadline also. Second requirement is that you have all authentication procedures must be documented. You need to have an audit trail for every verification. Okay, you cannot just without audit trail you can implement this one. Third thing, any failure to implement means supervisory actions. The CBK has explicit about these consequences. We all know it very well. Now, every verification must be logged in a format which is accessible for CBK inspection. They are only given a format. In that format, you have to do it. So, which is plays a very, very important part. So, it is that I think this process will definitely strengthen your KYC processes, will reduce your kind of identity fraud or kind of risk in that, because the same process what we have got here in UAE as well. We have got a UAE Pass integration back in 2023, where a customer is holding Emirates ID, we can go to the UAE Pass, check his face, read his ID. The system will directly captures all his information with image and everything. So that really helped all the institutions in reducing the time for the KYC and getting the proper information, verified information, because this is all verified information. So that will definitely help you in this way. Other circular, what was there, which is one of the most operational complex area, which is there, which we have seen exchange houses might be struggling with this. So now the Kuwait has introduced a tied framework for charitable transfer based on two criteria, which is very, very important. The first criteria is destination country, and the other is a country's global terrorism index score. Okay, so there are three tiers which we can explain here now. There you can see first, second, and three. So, and the requirements are very different with each other. The first tier is that standard transfer. Now, what happened in this? It applies to the countries not on the restricted list and with a global terrorism index score which is below 8.2. So that means transfers are authorized without prior ministry approval. But the three requirements must be met. What are those three requirements? The three requirements is the first requirement is the recipient must be an accredited entity which should be registered with the MOFA. MOFA Humanitarian System Action System, which is the system which is there. Second is that the transfer request letter signed by all authorized signatories of the charity must be approved. Second requirement. The third requirement is that the MOFA issued certificate with a barcode must be attached for every transaction request. So these are the three requirements which are there for Tier 1, which is standard transfer. The Tier 2 is a MOSA approval requirement. So what does it mean? That means, so this tier applies to our around 30 countries that exceeds the 8.2 GTI threshold. So that list includes your Syria, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and among others list which are there. So for these Tier 2 countries, all such transactions you need to be halted until the official Ministry of Social Affairs approval is received. So you do not process on the basis of the pending application. The approval must be in hand before you process any kind of transaction which falls under Tier 2. So this was about Tier 2. Tier 3, which is a dual approval requirement. Now, in this, what happens that the Tier 3 is a more restrictive kind of thing. So it targets specifically countries regardless of GTI score. The list includes like UAE, Saudi, Bahrain, Iraq, France, Oman, and other countries which are there. So for Tier 3 countries, both the Ministry of Social Affairs and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs approval are required. Apart from that, additionally, you need to have a full documentations dossier where you have to present the full documentation. So this is not a quick transaction. You have to plan accordingly and then process this kind of transaction. So this is very, very important thing which you need to understand. So the practical implementation for this front line, when a charitable transfer request comes in your staff, you need to must be immediately identify the destination of the country, determine its tier, whether it's tier 1, 2, or 3, and know exactly what documentation is required before accepting any kind of such transactions. So that makes a life simple. So the important thing, you need to make a complete framework for this, make a complete procedure for this, and give a proper training to the staff so they will be aware of that, what exactly they have to do whenever they come across such kind of transactions and everything. Yeah, so this is all about this circular what we have received. Next slide, please. Now, this circular is related to your STR and SCR obligations and PF sanctions. This plays a very, very important part here. Yeah. So, as we all know, we close this. I think the last topic was to discuss about this STR and everything. So, let me go through specifically the rules, what this circular says about STR, SCR, which is circular number 596 of 2025. And this says that the 2-day filing deadline runs from the moment suspicion arises, not from when you finish your investigation. That plays a very, very important. This is a very, very important point which you need to understand here. So that means suspicion triggers the clock. When you have a suspicion, that time that clock triggers. You need to file, you need to continue the investigation. That's very, very important part here. The second part, what they're saying is that you must report regardless of the transaction amount, even though if it is below 3,000 CD threshold or something. So if something is suspicious, the amount is irrelevant. You cannot think, okay, the amount is small, why should I report it? Even if it is 5, 10 also, you need to report it. So even the small transactions can indicate kind of structuring or smurfing or something, okay? All filing, you must go through the GoML platform. So every exchange house need to ensure that they must be registered on the GoML platform. If they're not registered, make sure you immediately go and itself register it today, because otherwise it will be a kind of compliance breach. Tipping off is a criminal offense. It's very, very important. You must never, under any circumstances, I would say, inform the customer that you have been reported or that your case is under investigation, nor indirectly, nor directly, nor by any reference something. So that message you have to pass it to your down the line also. The STR does not go to the police, as we all know that, right? So it goes to the FIU. So the FIU financial, which is Kuwait, the Financial Intelligence Unit. So they, then they make the determination about the STRs. And then in case they do the internal investigation, and then they will see for whether this needs to be further investigated or this to be forwarded to the public prosecution or not. So the most important part for you is the quality of the STR matters here. How quality of your STRs is there. Okay, a well-written STR that articulates about the suspicion, what happened, what was the transaction identified, what was the suspicion you identified, what action you have taken, has to be properly documented. Then only the FIU can take a decision on that. A general kind of form definitely will not have to understand the FIU, what exactly happened in that. So that is the most important part in the circular, which you need to always understand. Other part is that about your proliferation financing, okay, which has also come in as a circular 176 of 2025. So this is an area where the regulated consequences are more severe here. So the proliferation financing relates to the, just to give you a brief about it, is related to the financing of the proliferation for weapons or mass destructions, and the obligations are immediate, and the penalty framework is also, that what are those. Now, what they have given 3 steps which you need to follow, and that must be happening in sequence and within a time frame. The first thing is about immediate freeze, which is very, very important. So what does it mean? That means the moment, okay, a designated person or entity is identified by your system, okay, through your screening system or through other means and all, you need to immediately freeze all the funds, okay, or any kind of economic resources associated with them without any delay. Immediate means without any delay. Okay, there should not be any managerial approval required first. You do not need to wait for board to approve first or your manager to approve first. No. Or to double check first. No. You don't need to wait for all of these. You identify, you need to immediately freeze it. So the freeze happens within 24 hours of designation becoming effective. Okay. So that plays a very, very important part here. Second thing is as your prohibition of funds. Now, once a freeze is in place, you must not make any funds or any kind of financial services available to the customer, whether directly or indirectly, okay, or to the benefit of designated person or something. So the prohibition is absolute. Okay, so there is no exception for innocent third parties or who happens just with designated person and all. No, you have to completely prohibit everything, restrict providing any kind of services to them, whether directly or indirectly. Third important thing is what? You need to immediately notify the special committee. So all persons means, meaning your institutions, you must immediately notify special committee at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs within 24 hours of taking any kind of freezing measures and everything. So the notification address is also given in that you can see on the screen, which is ctc@mofa.gov.kw. So this email ID must be your compliance team's contact. So, in your compliance manual, they should be there, and make sure whenever it happens, you need to immediately send an email to them. So as we all know that if there's a lot of penalties on this also, in case if you don't follow this properly, the penalties will come in place. Now for this, what is most important for you is you need to have a properly automated screening systems that should generate a possible matches. Okay, so ignore the process transaction. You should know what needs to be done whenever there's a freeze happen, the match happens, what to freeze, how to freeze, what action you have to take, and how to notify it. So that plays a very, very important part here for this one. So with this, I have concluded my session for the today. So once again, thank you so much for your time today. I will now hand over the deck to Mr. Uday, who is the CEO of a Pinnacle Consulting Company, and who will take you through the remaining slides today. So if you have any questions, we'll definitely address at the end of the session today. So once again, thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank
Over
you,
to
Mr.
Mr.
Amarjeet. Thank you, Mr. Amarjeet, for such an insightful session. Melinda, can you go to the next slide, please? So I think we have 12 minutes remaining. So I'll just try and quickly skim through all the document material. My name is Sudhit Wadhwa. I am CEO and partner at Pinnacle Consulting Company, which is AGMS firm in Kuwait. So after what Mr. Amarjeet has told, I'll walk you through some case studies, what happens in real life at exchange companies. So the first is, the structuring worker. So, there's a domestic worker who visits your exchange house, let's say 3 times on the same day, each time sending 950 KD. Although now it is not allowed, that you can do it on the same day more than 1000 KD in cash. But let's say that person is visiting you with different modes. Okay. So first of all, splitting transactions to stay under the limit of 1000, because in many companies the cash limit would be set to 1000, so they are trying to be just below the threshold. So this kind of pattern is consistent with structuring, which avoids reporting of thresholds. And the daily volume is also inconsistent with declared income for domestic workers. This much of amount, if it's being sent, it's inconsistent. So that is something that should raise a red flag for any exchange companies. So what should be done when you encounter these kinds of patterns? File the STR immediately within 2 business days, document the pattern, and block repeat same-day transactions, as well as apply EDD going forward. So this is a classic, structuring or splitting scenario. The next one is the charity transfer to restricted countries. So let's say a scenario is a registered Kuwaiti charity requests a transfer of 15,000 KD to an organization in Syria for a humanitarian project. So the red flag in this is that Syria is a tier 2 restricted country under July 2025 charitable transfer mechanisms. So MOSA prior approval letter is not presented. That is another red flag, which is a minimum requirement for that. And the barcode certificate is also not provided. So when you encounter these kind of red flags, immediately it should trigger some kind of action at the exchange house. So what is the first step that you do? Do not execute this kind of transaction without complete documents. So you need to request MOSA prior approval, which is the Ministry of Social Affairs prior approval. Inform the charity of requirements, document the refusal in case you have refused and review the charity's past transfers as well. So again, this is something that you need to look at very thoroughly when any kind of charity-related transactions are coming to your exchange house. Melinda, can you go to the next slide? Yeah. The another one is the sanctioned beneficiary match. In this, again, a customer requests a transfer to a company in Turkey. Your automated screening returns a possible match against UNSCR SCR list. So the red flag says possible name match against the UN sanctions list, even if uncertain. Customer insists then that it's a different company with a similar name. Is trying to convince the branch agent or the frontline agent to conduct the transaction. It is similar. It's not the same or something. They're trying to justify it. And even let's say the transaction amount is significant, it's a 12,000 KD. So, when these kind of things happen, you need to freeze immediately. Do not process these kind of transaction if it's a 100% match. Notify the special committee after doing your all due diligence. Ideally, the compliance officer of the exchange house needs to do the due diligence and inform within the next 24 hours. And again, tip off is something that you should never do whenever you are filing any kind of suspicious transaction reports. So do not tell the customer about the freeze and escalate to the compliance officer. So this is, when the sanctioned individual is a beneficiary match. Then inadequate customer due diligence at account opening. Again, this is another very classic scenario. It happens a lot of time. Exchange houses ask them that, what is the right time for doing the KYC or the CDD or EDD. So there's no fixed timing. It depends on various events and what kind of transaction patterns you are noting. So this scenario, we are trying to tell you that during one of the CBK inspection, the inspector finds that 15 customers with that transaction volumes above 50,000 KD in a year have no source of fund documentation on file. This is a red flag in itself. So what are the red flags overall in this scenario? Missing sources of funds for high value customers. No enhanced due diligence was applied despite high risk transaction volumes. Customer due diligence files not updated in over 2 years. So as as per your risk-based policy, you need to define customers into high, medium, and low risk, and then eventually you have to do KYC on regular basis. No evidence of ongoing monitoring. AML audit flagged this, management did not act. So in case these red flags are there, then what you should do ideally? Immediate remediation is required in this case. Obtain the source of funds from all affected customers. Apply enhanced due diligence. File STR assessments if needed. Update customer due diligence procedures. And overall, this risk is high in this case. So you need to ensure that these kind of cases you act immediately so that overall you are not in breach of any kind of CBK's AML requirements. Can you go to the next slide, Melinda? Okay, so before we move ahead, I'll just tell you that how we as Pinnacle Consulting can assist and become your compliance partners for overall FATF journey of Kuwait, wherein we are planning and overall country should plan for moving out of the grey list. Can you go to the next slide, please, Melinda? Okay, so in terms of, for compliance services for exchange houses, we have our own core remittance system that we provide, which is, have the capability of PASI integration, which is as per the latest regulation. It has all the compliance related modules as well. Let's say the AML transaction monitoring, GoAML reporting system for reporting to Kuwait Financial Intelligence Unit. As a standalone, we also have sanction screening tool, which is, doing the automated screening against UN consolidated list, Kuwait local list, real-time PEP sanctions and adverse media. Also, we help companies in drafting policy and procedures for AML CFT compliance policy and procedures. We also provide people on secondment basis, wherein we have compliance professionals for assisting financial institutions. Again, we also do a lot of AML CFT training. This is one of the webinars, but we do in-depth AML CFT trainings for a lot of financial institutions. We help them even get qualified with CAMS training. Compliance officer reports, again, this is as per the latest circular that from CBK that compliance managers reports should be more enhanced to the board, and the skill set of compliance officers needs to be enhanced. So we help in that also. And finally, we also look at business risk assessment for various financial institutions. Melinda, can you go to the next slide, please? So overall, one of the last slide before we move on to the questions is, these are 6 steps framework which we implemented in UAE when UAE came into Grey List. We usually have this kind of framework for any kind of company. First is that you do a risk and gap assessment. Then you implement based on the gaps identified, look at it from oversight perspective. You need to have proper policies and statutory reports in place. Then you need to have, based on the gap assessment, you need to enhance your technology platforms. You need to give training to your board as well as to the staff. And then, eventually staff role-based training is something that is key aspect, which we helped many institutions in UAE so that everybody became more compliant and UAE as a country was removed from Grey List within 24 months. All right, with that, thank you everyone for joining in. I know we have only 3 minutes, so probably we can take 3-4 questions. Melinda, if you can look at the key questions and ask us so that we can answer quickly.
So thank you, Mr. Udit, as well as Mr. Amarjeet. We are now open for questions. Does anyone have any questions? As of now, we don't see any questions.
Okay, I think I can see some questions in the chat. So does these regulatory requirements apply to an IMT or regulated outside of
Reply to
UAE?
that question. There was a question on that.
Okay. All right. I think some of the questions we have already replied.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions? Melinda, anything from your side?
Nothing from my side, as I'm not able to see any questions on the screen also that's populated as of now.
Okay. All right. Anyways, you can always reach out to us. The email address is mentioned on the screen that has been shared at the moment, agmsfluid@agmsglobal.com, where you can reach out to us, to inquire about any question that we may have. We would love to answer them. Also, if you would like to explore any of our services, we are more than welcome. We are more than happy to assist you. And probably that's about it. Thank you, everyone. Melinda, over to you for the closing remarks.
So thanks a lot, everyone. You may contact us for any further questions, or if you have any kind of queries. We also have our company that is located within Kuwait. Our address is mentioned, also our email ID and our phone number. So thank you, everybody, for joining this session. Thank you all. So I'll be
Thank you,
closing it
Melinda.
up.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.